we go. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker Carl. I'm here with my good friends, Dan and Catherine and Jason and Angel. And today we're going to be talking about the book. What is this book called? Oh, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And we are in chapter 4 on page 125. If you're following along in the book, you can find us on page 125. We're starting with genius question number 2. But before we get going, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we can get the conversation going. Jump out, guys.
I'm Angel Baker down here in South Carolina.
Dan Sissick in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Hey, good to be here. Jason Robertson, Tampa, Florida.
Good morning, everybody. It's Catherine Clement, and I'll be doing the reading. And I just wanted to remind you that last week we kind of started this section called the Genius Questions. And he reminded us that sincere commitment is the entry gate to the zone of genius. And he wanted us to not just ask ourselves some questions, but to really wonder about some questions. And we covered the last question, or the first question last week, which was, what do I most love to do? I love it so much that I can do it for long stretches of time without getting tired or bored. And what he wanted us to do was just sit with that question, for 45 minutes, if that's what it takes, but just sit with it and really figure out, if it weren't for your responsibilities, or it weren't, if there was nothing else involved and you could just do what you most love to do, what would that be? Because a lot of people have never even considered that, because they're just doing what they got to do to put food on the table or whatnot. So now we're on genius question number 2. And hopefully those of us that were here last week spent some time with that question and can talk a little bit about that later, or maybe why we didn't, if we didn't. So genius question number 2. Now, let's render what I most love into something much more specific. Here's the second genius question I'd like you to ponder. What work do I do that doesn't seem like work? I can do it all day long without ever feeling tired or bored. So the first question was, what do I most love to do? This one is, what work do I do that doesn't seem like work? So I guess I've misinterpreted the first question a little bit, because it wasn't really talking about work necessarily. It was just, what do I most love to do? This one's about work. What work do I do that doesn't seem like work? So there's something at the very heart of the work you identify when you ask yourself this question. When you're doing this certain thing and not burdened with the pressures and irritations of running a business, you're at your very happiest. When you're doing it, you think, this is why I do the work I do. I counseled an executive in his mid-50s, Bob, who had risen through the ranks in a major corporation a few months after his promotion to CEO. He came to me because, as he put it, I haven't had a decent night's sleep since I took over the job. Something's wrong, and I can't figure out what it is. I flew out to Chicago to see if we could find out what was bugging him. Genius question number 2 turned the key. When I asked him what aspect of his work didn't feel like work to him, he told me that what he loved best was wandering around, talking to other executives for 10 seconds or 5 minutes about whatever was on their mind. He said he got more done in those casual conversations than in formal meetings. Suddenly, the light dawned. He said, I haven't done that a single time since I got promoted to CEO. The reason was partly logistical. He was now in a suite of offices that was separate from where he did his wandering around. He had also been so inundated with new data that he spent most of his time trying to get it all into his head. He made a commitment to start wandering around again, and even did an hour of it while I was there. I flew back home that night and heard the next day that he got a good night's sleep. If you're like most of us, you feel sad or irritated about the amount of your precious time that gets eaten up in the necessary trivia of your day. As you get more successful, it's common to feel a mounting pressure about this issue, an unnatural hurry up that feels unhealthy to your well-being. I believe that sense of mounting pressure is the call to live in your zone of genius. I've seen it disappear with miraculous speed when people opened up to wondering about what their true genius might be. If you're feeling any of that kind of pressure, you've made it to the right book, and I'm very glad you did. Genius question number 3. Here's the third question I'd like you to entertain in that vast playground where your heart meets your mind. In my work, what produces the highest ratio of abundance and satisfaction to amount of time spent? Even if I do only 10 seconds or a few minutes of it, an idea or a deeper connection may spring forth that leads to huge value. By asking myself this question, I discover that part of my genius is the free play of ideas in my mind. It's the ability to let ideas tumble and transform, free of criticism and censure until something useful emerges. I've had projects where I've incubated and tumbled an idea for years before the fruitful outcome came forth. But I've also had experiences in which a few seconds devoted to free mind play have turned into millions in revenue. I never knew exactly where it's going to lead, or whether it's going to lead anywhere at all. That's part of the excitement of it, not knowing. And it may be that not knowing is the key to the success of the process. Over and over, I hear executives in fits of frustration give voice to complaints like this. If I could just sit in my office and think for an hour without being interrupted, I could produce amazing results. I don't make that complaint anymore, although I used to hear it come off my lips fairly often. For many years now, I've spent at least an hour every day meditating and letting my mind roam freely. Setting aside time to do this every day is a practical way to make good on my commitment to one of my highest priority activities. The answer you come up with may be entirely different, but I promise you, there is some essential aspect of the work you do that produces the greatest payoff. Perhaps it's connecting with your staff or your customers in a certain kind of way. Or perhaps it's simply picking up the phone and having a certain kind of conversation with a key person. Whatever it is, I want you to find it, and I want you to put the highest priority on doing some of it every day. In my own case, I found it helpful to structure it into my day. This morning and every other morning for the last couple of decades, I sat down for half an hour of meditation and free mind play. I do this before I engage in any official work, such as email, writing, or project planning. To me, if something has the highest priority, it means I do it first. It takes a certain ruthlessness to set a priority and stick to it. For example, some years ago, I worked with Nancy, a woman who had a burning desire to write mystery novels. She also had 3 kids, a husband, and a big commitment to activities in her church and community. Nancy had published one novel that did well to make the publisher want more, but not well enough for her to hire household help or a personal assistant. In our first and only session, I asked Nancy to describe how she spent her day. She told me that after getting her kids and husband off to work, she straightened up the house and took care of infrastructure stuff like paying bills and making grocery lists. Then, she said, if I've got any energy left, I sit down and write for an hour or 2. If not, I take a nap and try to write for an hour or so before the kids start coming home. I summarized Nancy's priorities based on how she spent her day. Your family is your highest priority, right? She agreed. Your second priority is housework and infrastructure, and your third priority is writing. No, she exclaimed. Writing is much higher priority than housework and that sort of stuff. I pointed out that if that were true, she would do her writing before she did her house-related things. Her reply was the key to resolving the whole issue. She said, but I can't sit down to write unless I've got a clean house and things taken care of. Sure you can, I said. You just think you have to get that other stuff done first. Where did you get an idea like that? She said, but what if my husband came back from work and found a dirty house and me sitting up there writing? He'd find a wife who'd put a higher priority on her creative expression than she did on keeping the house clean. Do you think he'd be upset about that? Not really, she said. I think he'd actually like it. As our conversation developed, it became clear that she was holding herself hostage to housework for upper limit reasons. Nancy's unconscious mind had constructed a doomed scenario of what would occur if she went all the way into her zone of genius. In her imagination, if she put her full attention into her writing, she'd neglect her family and they would languish in the absence of her attention. Nancy began to see the absurdity of that way of thinking. She also discovered the real fear that was underneath it all, and if she made a big commitment to her creativity, she might fail on a bigger scale. If she stayed small, she could avoid the possibility of big rejection. We covered another important chunk of territory in this session. Nancy also realized that she had a major fear of outshining her siblings. One of 4 girls, she had received mixed reactions from her sisters when her first novel came out. One sister had been thrilled and very supportive, while the other 2 showed various signs of jealousy and competitiveness. Her unconscious mind's solution had been to put the brakes on her creativity and let herself get consumed by housework and other pressures of daily life in hopes that the strains in the relationship with her sisters would disappear. I suggested another possibility to Nancy. Don't hold yourself back to keep your sisters from feeling jealous. Go all the way and inspire them with your full expression. You can't manage their feelings. Their feelings are their business. They'd probably be just as jealous if you bought a new refrigerator, so you might as well go all the way and write a few bestsellers. That way, they'll be jealous about something worth being jealous about. They might just go in a positive direction, though, and get inspired to do something magnificent in their own lives. As we wound up our session, I gave her a homework assignment. For 1 week, sit down and write before doing any of the house-related tasks. I told her, after you get your husband and kids out the door, force yourself to go up and write for an hour or 2. Break the pattern. Your mind may try to get you back in the old pattern. It might scream, no, 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 wash those dishes. Put those clothes in the dryer before you write. If you don't, civilization will collapse. Just politely thank your mind for the unsolicited advice and then sit down and write anyway. I never saw Nancy again in person, although she called me a couple of times to report on her progress. The task she'd taken on was not an easy one. She had spent many years being programmed to do things in a certain way. In her growing up years, her mother had been a stay-at-home mom whose house was always spotless. It took her many weeks to get her literary life up to a higher priority than her domestic chores. There were more than a few days when she fell back into the old pattern, but over the next year, she was able to move her creative activities up to where they belonged on her priority list. Genius question number 4. I think this is the last one, so I'm going to go ahead and finish it. Take a deep breath and expand to embrace a new conception of yourself. The 4th genius question invites you to think of who you are in most unusual terms. It asks you to identify a unique and priceless gift you carry within yourself. Your exploration into this aspect of yourself is not about self-flattery or expansion of your ego. It's a clear-eyed look at a deep innermost quality with the intention of applying that quality to make your own life and the lives of others more valuable. Here's the question. What is my unique ability? There's a special skill I'm gifted with. This unique ability, fully realized and put to work, can provide enormous benefits to me and any organization I serve. Give me just a second. We're in search of the deepest essentials here. If you look into the essence of who you really are at the deepest level, you'll find a unique gift you've been blessed with. That gift is your greatest contribution to the people around you. It's the pinnacle skill of your working life. You can also use it to great benefit in your non-working life. The ability is not unique in the whole world. There may be millions of people who have it. However, it's usually unique in your particular circle or work setting. Do you know what your unique ability is? You may have discovered it already, but if you haven't, I'd like to show you how to find it. First, let me share with you an image I'd like to use. Have you seen a set of those little Russian dolls? When you open the big doll, there's a smaller one inside it, and hidden within that doll, there's an even smaller one. Using that image, think of your unique ability as a skill within a skill within a skill. Here's what I mean. Your unique ability is usually camouflaged inside a larger skill you possess. You may not even realize that your unique ability is what is driving your success in applying the larger skill. For example, I didn't learn about my unique ability until well into my 30s. I had been using it all along, but it was like water to a fish. I had taken it so much for granted that I didn't know it was a definable skill that could be described and refined. I knew I had a skill in helping people solve problems. I didn't get any formal training in therapy skills until I was 24. But according to a family story, I had an early leaning in that direction. I set up a cardboard box office in my grandmother's living room when I was a preschooler. I told my family that my job was to help people solve problems. According to the story, I was very clear that I didn't handle medical problems. They could take those to an ordinary doctor. I told them I specialized in problems around the house. Since I grew up in a small southern town with no psychiatrists, psychologists, and such, I haven't a clue where I might have picked this idea up. I should also mention that this first foray of mine into the counseling business was an utter flop. None of my family members ever took advantage of my services. In retrospect, I can forgive them for being reluctant to consult with a therapist who wore short pants and commuted to work on a tricycle. My unique ability occurs within the larger skill of helping people solve problems. The best way I can describe it is that I can be with people in a certain way that enables them to come up with creative solutions they hadn't thought of before. I can create a space that brings forth innovative solutions from inside myself or from people I'm working with. I can feel this ability inside me right now. It's a feeling of respect for the creative process, coupled with a non-judgmental listening for something new to emerge. I can wait patiently as long as it takes for a new solution to emerge. Possibly because I'm willing to wait for as long as it takes. It usually doesn't take long. Let me give you a real life example of how this ability works. I consulted once with the top 2 executives of a Fortune 500 company. They had gotten into a conflict about whether to build a new factory in South America. By the time I got called in, they had been at loggerheads for 2 weeks. The conflict had erupted into emotional displays that were unsettling to the other executives. The first thing I asked them was whether they would be willing to have a creative solution emerge from our conversation, whether it took 2 minutes or 2 days. They said they would be. So the second question I asked them was, what do you think is really going on here? This question confused them, and I explained that whenever a conflict has gone on as long as theirs had, there was almost always some other factor that was the real cause of the problem. They said they understood, but they had no idea what it might be. Here's where I put my ability into play. I said, then let's just wait and listen. Maybe something will emerge. We sat in silence for 10 seconds, then 20. One of them coughed. Then silence reigned again for another 20 seconds or so. Finally, the top guy said, I feel like I'm losing control of the company. If we build this factory down there, it's goodbye to the company we started with. I'm an engineer. I like to walk through the R&D section and shoot the breeze with the engineers anytime I want to. The number 2 guy just sat there looking stunned. Yeah, number one continued. I used to be able to stand in the parking lot and see the whole business. I liked that feeling. It felt manageable. Now we're growing so fast, I see employees in the halls I haven't even met. It scares me. Finally, number two said, I get it. I couldn't figure out what was going on with you. Why didn't you tell me that before? Number one raised his palms in a gesture of helplessness. I didn't know it myself until a moment ago. A few minutes later, they came up with an innovative solution: build the factory in South America as planned, but expand the research and development functions they would need there and base them at their present headquarters. That way, the head guy could continue his walkarounds among the engineers and have the parts of the business he loved close to home. In business, especially these days, you simply can't afford to have those kinds of conflicts go on for long. Conflicts cost money. They delay key decisions and turn speed to market into a molasses drip morass. One reason for the conflict between my two executives was that they hadn't opened up the kind of space between them that allowed a deeper communication to emerge. Once it came out, the problem was resolved quickly. Building the new factory became a business decision, not an emotional issue. A serendipitous event occurred while I was working on this section of the book. I caught the sounds of my two granddaughters, Imogene and Elsie, aged 10 and 12 respectively, playing in the pool with one of their friends, all under the watchful eye of my wife, Kathleen. To me, the sounds of kids playing is one of the sweetest in life. The squeals coming from the backyard were so delightful that I left the quiet of my den and went to work out back so I could be closer to the action. It wasn't long before the girls swam over to the pool's edge and asked me what I was working on. I told them I was writing a book about the upper limit problem. Elsie and Imogene nodded, the ULP having been part of their vocabulary much of their lives. Elsie's friend Hannah asked, "What's that?" It gave me an opportunity to hear how a 12-year-old would explain it to another 12-year-old. Without missing a beat, Elsie said, "If you don't know, it's okay to feel good and have a good time. You'll do something to mess up when things are going well." I was typing furiously, trying to capture every word. Hannah asked for an example, and Elsie thought for a moment, giving my fingers a chance to catch up. Finally, she said, "You remember when we were playing dodgeball during recess last week and that kid Frankie broke in and kicked the ball over the fence?" Hannah nodded. "He does that sort of stuff all the time." "Well," Elsie said, "he's got an upper limit problem. He doesn't know how to just have a good time all the time." Grandfatherly pride aside, I think that's a pretty good definition of the upper limit problem. Seeing we were on a roll, I told them I was working on a section about unique abilities. I asked them, "What do you think your unique ability is?" I explained that a unique ability was a special gift, something you were really good at that was also helpful to people around you. I was searching for another way to explain it when Elsie chimed in and said, "It's like a superpower, right?" She referenced a movie in which the four heroes each had a superpower they used to help in defeating the forces of evil. Imogene got it right away. "Yeah, like a superpower, only it's real." I couldn't have thought of a better way to describe it myself. I asked the girls, "What's your real superpower?" Right away, Elsie said, "I can sense other people's feelings." I readily agreed. Pretty much from her first breath, I've always found her to be one of the most sensitive, aware people I've ever known. Perhaps influenced by what Elsie said, the other two girls claimed similar superpowers. Imogene said her unique ability was knowing when people were angry but trying to hide it. Hannah said her skill was being able to tell if people liked each other. Recalling the dramas of life in junior high school, I told them I thought all those skills would come in very handy. Now, back to focusing on your own unique ability. I'd like you to be able to speak clearly and articulately about your genius. To do that, I've constructed an activity I use when coaching people on their genius. And that starts I can finish this. Articulating your unique ability. Here's a way to refine your understanding of your own innate genius. Recalling the image we used earlier about the Russian doll, let's focus first on the outermost doll. This is the larger skill within which is hidden your innate gift. Anne is a 40-year-old CEO of a Silicon Valley consulting firm. When I asked her about her unique ability, she answered, running meetings. That was the outermost of the Russian dolls. Now we went one level further in. I asked, when you're running meetings, what is it that you're doing when you're at your very best? She thought for a minute and then said, one thing is knowing when and how to gracefully cut off a discussion and move along. That gave us a little more detail, but it still was not the essence of the skill. I asked another question. What gives you the ability to know when to do that? She paused and reflected and then said, I've never thought about this before, but I feel an energy shift in the room and inside me. Something shifts in the room and I know it's time to move on. Her face began to take on a glow as we discussed this subtler skill. That's one way I can tell when people are homing in on their unique ability. Their faces reflect a sense of wonder and rapt attention. Now that I think about it, she said, I've been able to do that since I was a kid. It was a way to stay out of my parents' way when they were getting into one of their fights. She told me that she had grown up in a fairly chaotic family with a father who drank too much and a mother who resented having to carry the extra weight of responsibility. The first place most of us use our unique ability is navigating the tricky shoals of childhood. If you reflect on your unique ability, you'll probably find that it made its appearance early in your life. You used it probably without being aware of it to cope with stressful situations and optimize your ability to thrive. My early life was an ideal training ground for a budding therapist and executive coach. My mother struggled with depression after my father's sudden death, and I spent much of my early childhood living with my grandparents. They were wonderful with me, but their relationship with each other was a different story. By the time I arrived on the scene, they had been in a pitched battle for several decades, characterized by constant bickering and periods of uneasy truce. I became a go-between for them in times when communication would stall out completely. Since I was about the only thing they could ever agree on, I was in a unique position to help them paper over the rifts between them and get them talking again. Anne had refined her unique ability in the heat of similar action. I summarized what I'd heard her say. You have the ability to feel a certain kind of energy shift in the room and inside you, and tuning into this energy helps you know what to do. That's basically it, she said. I asked her if that ability showed up in other situations. I don't know, she said, but it's a good question because if I can use that wherever I am, I'll always know I'm applying my very best part of me to do the job. That's the payoff I'd like you to get to. To do that, I recommend that you deconstruct the set of Russian dolls until you uncover the one that contains your unique ability. Begin with a fundamental statement like this. I'm at my best when I'm fill in the blank. Let that statement resonate in your mind a few times, then speak it out loud. Discover what you come up with. Perhaps you come up with, I'm at my best when I'm generating ideas on a yellow legal pad, or I'm at my best when I'm figuring out how to put a team together. Just get a good general statement of what you're doing when you feel you're at your best. When you've come up with a simple, clear statement of you at your best, go a little deeper. Use a statement like the following to zoom in for a closer look. When I'm at my best, the exact thing I'm doing is fill in the blank. Go for a more detailed description, such as when I'm generating ideas on a yellow legal pad, the exact thing I'm doing is doodling and enjoying the feeling of creating something out of nothing. Go even deeper with a sentence like this one. When I'm doing that, the thing I love most about it is fill in the blank. For example, when I'm doodling and creating something out of nothing, the thing I love most is not knowing where it's going to take me. I love the surprise factor, the excitement of seeing what's going to emerge. You'll be able to know you're getting closer to your unique ability when you feel an inner glow of wonder and excitement. Even though I've been with hundreds of people as they tapped into that feeling, I never feel blasé about it. There's something intrinsically enlivening about being with people when they're discovering this depth within themselves. Probably because the process is connected to my own genius, I can engage in it all day long and never get tired. That's what I want for you. So I covered a lot. So I just want to go back and go over these questions again. So the first question to get you into your zone of genius is, well, the first thing was you were going to make your genius commitment. So you have to commit that you're going to enter your zone of genius, and then you're going to ask your questions and really ponder them for a while. The first one is, what do I most love to do? I love it so much. I can do it for long stretches of time without getting tired or bored. And the second one is, what work do I do that doesn't seem like work? I can do it all day long without ever feeling tired or bored. And the third one is, in my work, what produces the highest ratio of abundance and satisfaction to the amount of time spent? Even if I do only 10 seconds or a few minutes of it, an idea or a deeper connection may spring forth that leads to huge value. And then the fourth one was, what is my unique ability? There's a special skill I'm gifted with. This unique ability, fully realized and put to work, can provide enormous benefits to me and any organization I serve. And then as you're trying to figure out what your unique ability is, it wants you to fill in these questions. I'm at my best when I'm blank. I'm at my best when I'm at my best. The exact thing I'm doing is, and then when I'm doing that, the thing I love most about it is. So we're really diving in deep here. Which of these questions like really sparked an aha moment for you guys?
I think for me, I'm going to be honest. I think it's all of them from question one all the way through, because I've never really sat down and really ever taken stock of those things, because I'm always, and I'm going to put it as this, is always busy and doing things in life going on and trying to do all the things I feel I need to do. And sometimes stopping for me, even though I like my me time, because there are times where I just like to chill and relax and just vegetate, but there might be something more I could be doing in that vegetative time that still can be conducive, but I've never really ever gotten down to asking some of these type of questions.
I'll jump out. I'll say kind of number two, because I was like you. I was thinking one in terms of work as well. But I guess the question one, what I love to do most, probably more of a general thing, and being, maybe for me, it's being creative, doing something that being creative, because I I could feel like there are things that I love to do, but that I could do for long periods of time, but they wouldn't necessarily make me feel great after I was done doing them, because I might feel like there's something I could do that would be more productive. And so I think being creative and getting where you have at the end of whatever you're doing, you have something to show for it. For me, would really be the answer to number one. And then so that but I sort of, like I said, I wrapped one into the second question, which we hadn't heard yet, in regards to work. And so I mean, I guess that's kind of aha, because I really don't know what it is that I do for work that, I mean, other than some aspect of being creative, it has to do with solving problems, being creative, and in some way, shape, or form being industrious, pulling different aspects of things I know together in order to solve a solution, and coming up with a good solution that for something, which I suppose that could be that could be used in work. So that's it. So number two, I would say, though they're all really good questions, and I sort of got lost in all of it because I was actually also trying to remember what we learned and realized last week in regards to the difference between the zone of excellence and the zone of genius. There seemed like there was some major difference that I pulled from it last week, but I wasn't able to review it. So yeah, it was just there's a lot there. There's a lot that you went over.
Yeah, it was a lot. Maybe I should have stopped sooner, but it all kind of ties in together. And I think it's kind of telling that, we read that first question and the first thing we thought of was work. Maybe we're a little bit too focused on work, but for however long we've been doing this, 9 or 10 years or whatever, like we've talked about meditation and the importance of allowing space. And I see people every day talk about meditation, and I don't see people doing meditation, but it really is helpful, and it doesn't necessarily take an hour. I mean, you decide how long you're going to meditate. You can meditate for 3 minutes, and as long as you just, all you have to do is stop and bring yourself to the moment and drop into your heart, get out of your head, and just, you can just ask, what do I most need to know right now? And then just listen and tune in to anything that your body feels, any sensation that passes through. Thoughts may come through, just let them pass through, but just sit with that. And even if it's just for 3 minutes, it only takes one instant for a genius idea to come through. So this business about having to meditate for hours and hours at a time, that's not necessary, but it is necessary to make space for those thoughts. And to me, that is the difference between the zone of excellence and the zone of genius. In excellence, we're kind of running the show, like we're doing it all. Like you said, Dan, you're doing. You're doing. In the zone of genius, we're listening and following guidance, and we make progress a lot faster. Most of these gazillionaires out there, like they have think tanks. Thinking is actually a very integral part in making space for these ideas to come through. They build that into their process. us poor people don't do that so much, I think. Like we just build work into our process. You know what I mean, what I'm trying to get at? Like we think we have to figure it out, and we don't ask the right questions. Like that's what I'm finding the most remarkable about this book is his ability to ask the right questions to get to the right answers.
Yeah, I
Which
like
is
how
kind
he tells us to, oh, sorry, Dan.
no, go ahead.
Okay.
Go.
I like how he tells us in the story about the woman who says she wants to write the mystery novels, and she's got her priorities mixed up. She says that writing is like a highest priority, and yet she's doing the housework as a higher priority than the writing. And I think that we do that a lot to ourselves, and particularly us versus the gazillionaires, like what you're saying, Catherine, is that we are constantly oping ourselves, if you will, by doing the things that aren't really as important as we think they are. And I find myself doing that all the time. It's like, gosh, yesterday, wasn't it yesterday, it was the day before, I got up and I came out here in the office. It's the time of year where I'm supposed to be doing the stuff that ends the year for last year and prepped for this year. And I'm like on this new computer because I've mostly got everything transferred over there, and I'm trying to get my work done. And what do I find myself doing? I'm like sorting through pictures on my computer, trying to decide what pictures I want to have be my desktop background. I'm like, the silliest stuff. We get ourselves distracted. We allow ourselves to be distracted by these things that aren't really that important. I love this last question where it talks about what is it, not the last question, but the one where he's talking about the ratio of work to creating abundance. What was that? I just had it marked. Oh, here, in my work, what produces the highest ratio of abundance and satisfaction to the amount of time spent? And I feel like that's a big one. I mean, all of these questions are big ones, and I'm really going to have to dig into these and figure out some of this. But yeah, I pulled out a bunch of books from storage because that was one of the things I was doing this past weekend, was going through stuff that just hadn't been unpacked yet. And I have all these books that I've had for years, and a couple of them are like books like What a Millionaire Taught Me, or Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, or that kind of thing. And I'm like, I really need to read back through those again and see where I am, upper limiting myself, if you will, is to recognize, okay, where I've gone off track on so many different areas. But I feel like these are great questions to be asking ourselves. It's like, where do we feel the most productive when we're doing something? Because I feel like for me, feeling productive is an aspect of enjoying what I'm doing, as well as being in that kind of zone of, it's easy and it doesn't feel like work. So.
Excuse me. I was gonna say I'm right there with you about trying to get all my stuff caught up for last year. I've still got just from one account 300 things to go through and sort. But so I get you. But I was gonna say that for me, I think a lot of what I'm learning and understanding a little bit more is that I'm kind of like that woman with her mystery novels. In my head, I've got some ideas or things I know I would much rather do or something, or I'm still trying to figure that out maybe. But I know there's something, but yet I still let everything that I grew up with, or I've seen, or I've lived, or I've think about, like with work and stuff and getting, and I let that get in the way, and I'm thinking I'm being productive, and I'm using that in air quotes because I think we all feel that way. We're being productive and we're getting a lot done. But if you look at, I'll use Elon Musk as a, I don't know if everybody likes him, dislikes him. I'm not going, here for that. I'm trying to show that he's just there, and I don't think the man really ever sleeps, but yet somehow, or if he does, it's not for long periods of time. But yet he still always seems to be able to do and get things done at a high level. Look what he's done. He's got Tesla, he's got Starlink, he's now got Twitter and stuff, and somehow he seems to, but yet I know he takes time away to do what he needs to do so that way he can stay in tune with the creative side to keep that going. And I think, as we learned with that lady, that if we can pinpoint those things and realize that we are misplacing our priorities, that might be part of the first step to opening the door to answering a lot of these questions too, learning to ask those questions. But even then, sometimes in asking these questions, for me, I'm like, I ask them of myself, but then I kind of deter myself away from them because I don't want to say I'm afraid of the answer, but yet at the same time, I'm scared of the answer, in a sense, and instead of having somebody else outside of me ask those questions where I kind of have to give a response to give it back to myself, it's like, oh, I'll deal with that later. Let me put that aside. And I'm not then in my zone of genius. I'm still back in the zone of excellence. And I keep going in that hamster wheel.
I can totally relate to the writer, of course, because I'm a writer, and but I'm also an artist and I have commissions. So, I've been working a lot on commissions lately. In my mind, as I'm painting, sometimes I'm formulating other books in my mind to write, but the actual sitting down and write, like I write so many books in my mind that never get written. It's crazy, really. But because my memory is so short, like I sometimes I don't even remember them long enough to write them down. But I'm constantly, doing busy work, things that are not writing. I so totally can understand that. And cleaning, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know, just as women, I guess it's just drilled into me that everything has to be clean. And, well, I think I've shared with you guys before, I was shot at as a kid because the floor wasn't clean enough, not by my parents, but at a friend's house, shot at with a shotgun. So like, if I see dirt on the floor, my heart rate increases. Like, I've got to get that vacuumed up or whatever, and I will do household, before my writing. I'm quote self-employed, but I don't schedule myself like I should, like I would be scheduled at a job, because that's one of the reasons that I am self-employed, is because I want to be in charge of my time. My freedom is so important to me. And so I resist schedules, even though I know logically in my mind that schedules are necessary, schedules are helpful, schedules reduce stress, actually. And my stress needs to be reduced. So you would think that I'd be like right on top of that. But there's just so many things that we learn about, that we could do to help But then these upper limit problems hit us. I thought it was brilliant how that 12-year-old recognized that the boy that just threw the ball away, that was an upper limit issue. You know, that was probably, you guys don't like to play with me, nobody likes me, kind of act out sort of thing. You know, who knows what that could have been. But it's so amazing how we, you know, he points out we bring so much of this stuff from childhood. And what I really love too is that he's reminding us that genius is not something that's out there that we have to get to. Our genius is inside of us. You know, it's all there. All we have to do is ask these questions. Like you said, you've never asked these questions before. Our genius, you know, is like our higher self to me. It's really making that connection with our higher self and communicating and being guided by and accessing the abilities of that higher self, that superpower, that, you know, superhero with all of their abilities, because each of us do. And I love that the abilities that he talked about here and with the girls and the abilities that they talked about, they're kind of talking about being empaths here. And I love that they're recognizing that they have the ability to feel other people's energy and the room's energy, because these are things that weren't talked about in books for, you know, in a mainstream book like this, what I would consider this to be like a mainstream sort of business self-development kind of book. They didn't used to talk about stuff like this. And the issue with the two top executives, you know, where the guy finally says, you know, he breaks down and finally says what he's feeling. People don't talk about their feelings. And I think that's a problem a lot of times, because when we feel stuff, we automatically throw up these guards, you know, and other people can feel that energy. I don't think that that's something that only some people have. Everybody has the ability to feel that energy. They may misinterpret it as something else sometimes, but everybody has that. And so when we're blocking, we're throwing up guards, we can try to hide when we're aggravated with somebody, but most of the time they can tell, you know. And so, yeah, these are awesome questions to ask yourself. And even if you can't spend, you know, hours and hours on it because you have a busy life, just take a few minutes and quiet your mind and ask the question. And if you don't get an answer right away, just watch for different things to come into your life. Sometimes they don't speak to you in just a voice in your ear. Sometimes it's a license plate in front of you or whatever. So, but it's good. I'm glad we finished that chapter though. The next one, living in your zone of genius, using the ultimate success mantra to thrive in love, abundance, and creativity. That should be interesting. This book has gone in some areas that I hadn't expected.
Yeah, I love what you were saying there, Catherine, on all those aspects of that. I know for me that there are times where I can sense, you know, what's going on around me, but I throw up blocks to it too, definitely at a lot of times, because a lot of times I don't want to deal with the issues that will come after that at that time. I may not be emotionally ready for dealing with that. I think that's another part of it, is a lot of people don't, like you said, don't understand it, and they don't want to deal with the emotional aspects of that. They'd rather just stay in that excellence and work and this and that. Karen, oh my God.
Oh my
Yay!
God. Hi, Karen. It's so good to see you.
How are you?
Oh,
We've missed you so much.
Hey.
You're looking good.
yeah. But to
You have
finish
to
my
unmute. You're muted.
Don't make me cry.
Okay.
Well, I'm crying.
yeah. Wow.
Goodness. Goodness.
But I'll finish my thought. So in all of this, yeah, I just got to thinking because I know, like me, I'm here, and I think you guys will agree. I like to juxtapose and look at bring out other viewpoints and throw that out at people. And I love doing that. I love, not for trying to make arguments or anything. I just love throwing those things out to make people look at a different side of something. But I just now realize that that's something I love to do, and that's something I have always done, I think, all my life. But I've never really looked at it that way. And it's like, because I think that's part of the logical, analytical mind. I try to look at all things so I can, try and get the best answer. And usually I don't follow the best answer. I go with like, okay, yeah, whatever, and go with whatever I'm feeling or what I think is, my limiting beliefs or whatever, but I just now kind of realized that that's something I like to do. And I think that comes back from my grandmother, because my grandmother, I think, would do that a lot with us kids. Definitely not my parents. But my grandmother, I remember her doing that a lot. And I think I pulled that out. But the other thing I was going to say is there are times where I'll get in my business, but then like one day I'll be like, I know I should go out, or I know I should go Uber because I need to make this money. I need to make, keep where I'm at. But there are some times where I'll just sit there and say, no, I need a day off. And I'll take that day off and kind of veg and do stuff here and be in my own little. And even though I'm not focusing on one major thing, I might be doing laundry, running around doing this, cleaning this, and then relaxing later on in the day, and just kind of. I've learned I feel more energized after that and able to then go back out rather than if I push myself to go ahead and go out. So I am learning to read that part of me when I need to do that. Now, I think there's more I can do with that. Maybe ask some of these questions and stuff while I'm doing that, because I've never thought of these questions. So that might be something to think about. But it's so good to see you, Karen. We've missed you so much.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I've missed you guys too. I thought I was kidnapped. I was kidnapped. I thought I was north of the Canadian border, but I was really over in Sun City West in Surprise, Arizona. And for 60 days, I was away from where I live, from my shoes, from my money, from my ID, from my purse, from my clothes. It was quite awkward, quite terrible, quite miserable.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know how to get you all on screen. Let's see here. There you are. Oh, it's so nice to see you all.
You too, Karen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's wrap up this, and then after we go off live, then we can chat for a little bit. You can fill us in
Okay.
what you've been
Tell me
doing.
what book we're on.
The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Oh, okay.
And we just finished chapter 4 today. So, yeah. All right, guys. Well, we've had a good chat today. Does anybody have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Loving these questions, Betty. put out there, and some of the insights that getting from this book, because it's funny how we've gone through after what 10 years or whatever, all different books, but sometimes some of the things get said, but sometimes getting a book that says it a certain way, just like, oh, okay, it might make sense. Some of this is helping put a lot of other things into perspective from some of the other books we've read.
Yeah, I agree. They all seem to just build on each other, which is interesting. For as long as we've been doing this, and we still gain insights out of books that we think we look at it at first glance and we're like, well, maybe, and then we dig into it and we get into these deep topics. And I'd really like it if everybody did take maybe an hour this week and go through these questions in this chapter and really kind of dig into your own self in your insights and see what comes up. And then, we can come back next week and see if anything interesting showed up for us. We just spend some time doing that. I know I want to do it. So
Let's repeat the question since Karen came on after the reading.
Okay, go ahead.
So the questions are, let me find them again. What do I most love to do? I love it so much. I can do it for long stretches of time without getting tired or bored. That's the first question. What do I most love to do? The second one is, what work do I do that doesn't seem like work? I can do it all day long without ever feeling tired or bored. What work do I do that doesn't seem like work? The third question is, in my work, what produces the highest ratio of abundance and satisfaction to the amount of time spent? So even if I only do 10 seconds or a few minutes of it, an idea or a deeper connection may spring forth that leads to huge value. In my work, what produces the highest ratio of abundance and satisfaction to amount of time spent? And the fourth one is, what is my unique ability? There's a special skill I'm gifted with. This unique ability, fully realized and put to work, can provide enormous benefits to me and any organization I serve. What is my unique ability? So those are the questions everybody can work on this week. Have an awesome week.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Maybe we can start next week with just kind of reviewing the questions and seeing what everybody comes up with. That'd be fun. Go ahead, Jason. I saw you trying to unmute.
No, it's all good.
Okay. All right, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.